Welcome back to Megaphone Rugby. It's my privilege to talk to Peter Berg, triumphant coach of the Griquas, Suzuki Griquas, having won the Currie Cup against expectations a little bit. Peter, welcome back. You and I had a bit of a chat at the beginning of the season. Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, foresee this?
Yeah, hello, NBA. Yeah, no, I didn't. Even after the 2022 final, when we lost, you do think, will you ever get the chance again? Will you ever get the opportunity again? And yeah, it's just amazing what happened. What happened over the weekend. Yeah, it hasn't sunk in yet. Hopefully, we'll get time soon to sit down and reflect on everything, and when everything's a bit more quiet. But yeah, it was an amazing week for us.
Well, you guys also did the bus thing, didn't you? The whole triumphant tour through Kimberley and everything else. How was that?
Yeah, look, when we came back on Sunday, a lot's been said. We flew up. People don't always have their facts right. We flew up to the game to Johannesburg on Friday morning. Did our captain's practice at Alice Park on about 12 o'clock Friday afternoon. And then we stayed over after the match in the hotel, and we came back by bus. The bus left Johannesburg 9 o'clock Sunday morning. And there was a big party on the bus. Obviously, it's a long drive to Kimberley, and then yeah, when the bus entered Kimberley around 4 p.m. on Sunday, it was scenes that we didn't expect. It really in Kimberley at our stadium, it looked like the Springboks winning the World Cup. That was the scenes. It 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 was almost more emotional seeing that and seeing Kimberley like that Sunday afternoon than it was after the match for us. It
Mm.
was we. I don't think the players realized what they did until we entered Kimberley. There was more people here than most Mo matches in Kimberley. Waiting for the team on a Sunday afternoon when people should be resting. Most of the time resting in Kimberley. There was just a amount of people here that will forever remember the scenes on Sunday afternoon. Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about what it means to Kimberley a bit later, but I wanted to talk to you about when you started. You obviously had some goals in mind. Winning, obviously, everyone wants to win, but a realistic goal that you set for yourself that you thought that's achievable, that's going to help you grow, make the franchise stronger, the team stronger. What were those goals initially?
Yeah, I think I'm not someone, and we as a team, not someone who really sets a lot of goals. We really do take it day by day and game by game, and then see what happens. In the SA Cup, for example, we had a short-term goal, and that was to first thing was to qualify for the Currie Cup, to be in the top four. And then as soon as we were in the top four, we said, okay, let's go for a home semi-final. And as soon as we were in a home semi-final, we said, okay, let's now try and win this thing. And the same was in the Currie Cup. I've got a vision for this team. About 2 years ago, we put together the vision as a group, as a management, as a group, management team and players, and our vision for this union, and it's is to be the best non-URC franchise in South Africa.
Mm.
And that's my vision, and there's obviously a difference between a vision and a goal. People say, okay,
Mm.
now that's your goal, and you achieved your goal this year. But I mean, that's a long-term vision for me, that I want to be, especially while I'm here at this union, is that we have to stand out as being the best non-URC franchise in South Africa. So that's what drives us. We keep talking about that. That's what we work towards. Yeah.
All right. Two interesting things that popped out for me when you were saying that. The first one is non-UFC team. Do you think there's a case to be made for the Griquas now to actually somehow join a competition like the UFC? I mean, you guys are only going to be playing rugby again next year after this very successful SA Cup, very successful Currie Cup, and now you have to go sit home and twiddle your thumbs, basically. What's the future for the Griquas like?
Yeah, I mean, a lot's been said about this, and you don't always get quoted right in the media. When you say you want to play an international competition, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the URC or other, or the Challenge Cup, like the Cheetahs have the opportunity. We just feel that we know we're not good enough to play in a URC 18 team competition. We don't have the squad, we don't have the resources currently. Playing a once-off game against the Lions,
Mm.
and I mean, it's much easier than going into an 18 game season. But the reality is when you do play in another competition, you should get more broadcast money. You should get more sponsors. You should be in a better position to put a better squad together, to look up, to get better facilities, to get better recovery protocols in place, to get more staff in, So all we're saying is even if we play in the URC now and we do get the same amount of money than from SARU, just from SARU, than the Lions and the Bulls and the Stormers get, uh, that can go straight into our team. We don't have a lot of other expenses. We've got like 10 people. I don't think we've even got 10 admin staff in our offices.
Mm.
If we get another 20 or 30 million rand, I don't know exactly what the difference is, what the bigger unions get than we get. But if we get another 20 million rand into our player budget, we can get a much, much stronger team, and then we'll be able to compete. So with the current squad, we can compete here or there, but we're not good enough to go play a full season home and away um, so it's just for us. So whether I just think super sport with the small unions, with the big unions, everyone, all stakeholders in SA Rugby must come together and say, okay, what can we do? Even if it's not URC, maybe it's Super Rugby, maybe it's Japan, maybe it's America.
Mm.
Um, but we need to get a competition that we need to get more rugby. As you say, we're playing at the end of the beginning of March again. So it's 6 months that we do not play any rugby. There's definitely, I believe, opportunity to go look elsewhere.
The second thing that jumped out for me was when you said your vision of being the best non-URC team in South Africa was while you were still there. Sorry, this is a bit of an unfair question, but do you have any bigger ambitions?
Yeah, firstly, I'm very happy in Kimberley. I've still got a contract for 2 more years. There's been no inquiries. A lot of people have asked me about my future. I have ambitions. I want to coach at the highest level. I said earlier, my dream is to be involved with the Springboks. I think just as a player wants to reach the highest level, myself as a
Mm.
coach wants to reach the highest level as a coach. I do believe that I am ready to coach at URC level. I believe I'm good enough. But I also understand I'm only 40 years old. I turned 40 this year. I'm still very young in terms of coaching and obviously building experience. I'm a much better coach this year than I was 4 years ago 3 years ago when we played in that Currie Cup final in 2022.
Mm.
I learned so much from that day, and that's what experience is. So I'm just building my career, building experience, and hopefully an opportunity will come one day to coach international or international competition or be involved in one of the bigger franchises. But yeah, it's not a focus area for me now.
What I like about you in that sense specifically is you're very honest. I mean, you said in one of your interviews that when you applied for the Griquas coaching job a couple of years ago and Brent Janssen van Rensburg got it, you were disappointed, but you realized you were not quite ready for it yet, and you went to coach the Shimlas and then worked your way up again. I like that kind of attitude. Like you just said, now you know that you may be still young, but you know what you're capable of. You know where you want to go to. And on that subject, Jimmy Stonehouse has now been pulled into the Sharks as a sort of a consultant, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Is there any possibility maybe of you doing something similar with one of the other unions, the Stormers, for example? You're getting a lot of your players are now being loaned to the Stormers. You've got a sort of an agreement with them. What are the chances of that happening?
If there hasn't been any inquiries, to be honest. So if there is, then obviously I'll discuss it with the board. I also have a preseason I need to run with these players, and with this group, and for me to go leave these players. We've obviously got capable people here. We've got good people here. We've got incredible conditioning team. We have incredible assistant coaches, but as a head coach, you want to be with your team. So I think it will be. That's obviously if the opportunity comes up, then we'll obviously discuss that. But yeah, we'll also, even as a coaching group, we look to go spend a week down at the Stormers as a group, maybe go somewhere else and go go learn and go see where we can improve our program that we run. But yeah, we'll obviously be open for that. But yeah, there's nothing has happened so far.
The bull in me says rather go to Pretoria, man. You'll learn much more. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Please, Thomas, don't shoot me. I'm just joking. All right. I wanted to talk to you about this Curry Cup now. When you started, you had your plans, you had your sort of semi goals, let's call it that. And then you traveled down to Nelspruit, it's, the scene where you lost the final against the Pumas of the SA Cup just a couple of weeks before. And then you lose again, and you lose quite heavily. Yeah, how did you overcome that? Because one of the best features of a coach is not just being a technical or a tactical coach, but also a people's coach. How did you manage that?
Yeah, while we played that game in Nelspruit, we were just before halftime, we were in the lead, playing really well. Our plans were working, and then Ruta gone, just need to manage the line out, kick the ball out, and then we go into the lead at halftime. Then we lose the line out, we get a penalty against us, they kick out, they score, and all the momentum is against us at halftime. Just after halftime, it was a space of 10 minutes where we could receive three yellow cards, everything going against us. And then with about 10 minutes to go, we got back within 7 points, scored another try. They scored then with 14 points down. Then we scored another try that was disallowed, um, rightly so. And we could have walked away with 2 points from that game, but it ended up us losing the game by 21 points. And I just felt watching that game, I felt the scoreline isn't the
Mm,
true reflection of this match, and afterwards in the change room, you can always go, how do you, what do you say to the players? I think personally, my manager said to me the next day, he said, you got the message spot on afterwards. And you don't always get it right. Sometimes you go in big and you, you maybe shout at the players, or whether that's halftime um, you don't always get the
mm,
right message across. But the message after that match was, we're not far off. I really, really believe we're not far off. We were closer. We were closer than we think. Than the scoreline showed. We may be closer than you guys thought. We're not far off. We just need to stick together. We've got three home games in a row now. If we get three wins, we'll be in a good position. And that was the message. The message afterwards. And I really, really felt in my heart that we could have won that game, even though we lost by 21 points.
mm.
It's such as the small margins in this game, and then obviously going into our next three home games, build some confidence.
Just on that subject of the yellow cards, I mean, the final SA Cup, you also lost basically because of a red card, if I remember correctly. Was discipline a problem, or was it just, unfortunate?
Yeah, if you look at across the season, we've had, I think, 9 yellow cards, but those 9 yellow cards came in 3 matches.
Mm,
Because it wasn't a thing over the season for us. We're one of the teams who can see the least amount of penalties in the
mm.
competition. It was just, I had a discussion with the refs the other day. You get put on a warning. So for how long will that warning now really that be?
Mm.
How long is that until that warning is now? Okay, listen, the next penalty is not a yellow card. I mean, sometimes, now you defend your line, every penalty is now a yellow card. You might as well just, okay, let's concede a try, let's just get away. I think that's something you need to look at in rugby. I think in the SA Cup final, we were unlucky. With head contact, anything can happen. I still think we were harsh called that with the red card. So with head contact, it's always difficult. Then we had in Bloemfontein, we had 3 yellow cards as well with against the Cheetahs just before we played the Lions. I think luckily that didn't cost us. But again, that was just multiple infringements on your try line. So where it
Yeah.
just go yellow card, okay, and next penalty is also yellow card, and next penalty is also yellow card. So that makes it really, really difficult, because you're under pressure, you're playing with 12 men. But I don't think it was a discipline, and
Mm.
since over the years, our discipline's been really, really good.
Oh, we're talking about the Cheetahs now. Wait, typically that's, I suppose, almost your derby, playing against your next door neighbors almost. But you beat them both times you played against them, either in the league or in the semi-final, very, very convincingly. Franstein had big plans. How did you approach those games specifically? Like the Bulls against Stormers, there's always a little bit of extra niggle, a bit more, to play for. Talk to me about those games.
Yeah, since I think the last time we lost now against the Cheetahs was March 2023, So have a very good record of late against him. The last time last year, Ruan Pienaar's last match in the SA Cup in Bloem. I think we also beat him by about 20 points. And we had two tight games against him. We beat him in the Currie Cup here convincingly last year. Um, we had two tight games against him in the SA Cup, two games that really could have gone the other way. Um, and then we had a friendly against him in Bultfontein before the Currie Cup. I think we won by 20 points. Really played well, and then obviously the two matches now in the Currie Cup. So I just think no, you know, we you just get those teams we have a good record against. We've got a
Mm.
good record against the Province. We've got a good record against the Cheetahs. We struggled of late against the Pumas. It's the Pumas again. They struggle against the Cheetahs. It's the Cheetahs have their number, but it's just you get those teams that you just to get a bit of confidence. I don't know. Bit of belief. And I think I know the Cheetahs. I know Tiaan Liebenberg well, for instance. I worked with him at CUT. He was my assistant coach there. But know a lot about their players, obviously with Varsity Cup experience and stuff. So yeah, I just think, and I think, to be honest, I think our players are very motivated as well when they play the
Mm.
Cheetahs. They play in the Challenge Cup. We haven't lost 2 years against them. Our players believe that we should get the opportunity. Um, and yeah, a lot of them have previous experience, whether it was at Shimlas or CUT or Grey College or with the Cheetah setups. They're really motivated when they play the Cheetahs.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, I mean, what was a Bullstorm, a 7-1 or something? Every time you want to play a bit special. But I didn't realize that you've been so consistent against them. And that's actually quite an interesting statistic. Right. Then the week after that first Cheetahs game, league game, you played against the Lions and you lost badly. Let's call it what it was. But yet 2 weeks later, you managed to turn that around. And that tells me a tale of a very good coach on your side. So how did you manage that? I mean, firstly, I know there's a story going the rounds about, the Griek was getting into the heads a little bit. Yeah, we're playing against a URC team, and you managed that specifically. But talk to me about that. And talk to me about that turnaround, how you managed that, how you planned for it, and what your strategy was.
Yeah, so firstly, I don't think we win the final if we don't play them 2 weeks before that. I think that helped us a hell of a lot, with making plans, with seeing what it is to be playing against the higher quality opposition, better players, a URC team, But yeah, so that game, that Lions game, we were really motivated. We had an opportunity to finish top of the log, which was obviously a goal for us. Can host a semi-final and possibly a final. But you also didn't know really what to expect. You're playing against Currie Cup opposition all year. Now they brought Kwon Horn, Enko van Wyk, all those guys in um, for that game. And the talk the whole week was, okay, you all want to play URC, now is your time to show you're good enough. And that was a chat in the media and everything. And maybe it took a focus a bit away of other stuff. We talk a lot. Rassie talks about let the main thing stay the main thing. We talk a lot about that as well.
Mm.
Is let the main thing stay the main thing. There's a lot of stuff, but you've got to get the performance right on the field. I mean, that's the main thing. Um, but then we get to Ellis Park. I think they spend almost 10 million rand on their change rooms. It's an incredible, the change rooms. I don't know if you've seen it. It's when you walk into the change rooms, our players aren't used to that. I actually spoke to Putte Iman, phoned me after Boland played, going a bit forward now. Putte Iman phoned me after Boland lost heavily against the Lions, and he said to me, obviously, good luck for the final. And he said, when last we at Alice Park, I said, what, do you want to talk about change rooms? He said, yes. He said, our players were shocked. Our players, they were taking photos and videos and stuff about change rooms, and immediately it took their focus of the match, you
Mm.
felt. And I actually felt the same, that it's an incredible experience, that change room. Actually, I ended up in the pool after the final there in that change room, um,
The pool in the
but
change room.
then
So,
yeah, then the the game was started later because of lightning and possible lightning in the air, and then we were waiting an hour, more than an hour for our warm up to start and our kickoff, and that's obviously something new, but which was the same for both teams. But I think when you're playing at home, I mean, I think it's in a better position when something like that happens. So we had to deal with that, and the game itself, I just felt our guys were almost a bit big-eyed.
mm,
If you can state the
overawed.
translation, Afrikaans. Yeah, it was. We didn't play with any speed. I felt the guys didn't back themselves. I felt that the mistakes we made wasn't because of the URC opposition, for there was an examples where we're very good off turnover ball, and when teams make a mistake against us the whole season, we would punish teams, and then with three turnovers in a row in that game where we won a turnover and immediately we kicked the ball away, and that was the type of stuff that when we after review before the semi-final against the Cheetahs, it was just listen. That wasn't us, that wasn't a Griquas performance. That wasn't, we moved away from what worked for us. Yeah, that was. I just felt it wasn't so much about the URC. It was more about our mindset, and we weren't energy, intensity, and energy wise. We weren't in that game, and that's why we lost heavily. Yeah, and then obviously looking back at that game, and I'm very hard on this, and we spend a lot of time on data and looking at stats and where what team strengths and weaknesses, and in that game we look at negative impact stats, and that's probably it's not just mistakes, but it's missed tackles, penalties conceded, handling errors, etc. And we were about 70 negative impacts in that game, and the Lions were about 30. So we had about more than double negative impacts on them. And then I looked at the Boland Lions game was exactly the same. I think Boland was about 66 and the Lions were about 30 negatives. And I thought, listen, we play in a final, we've got to be, we can't make as many mistakes. We've got to be accurate and we've got to be clinical. And if you're going to have double the negative impacts than the Lions, then we are going to be really, really under pressure. And then just felt we couldn't play the same way we played against him. Boland tried to play the same way. They really struggled. And then we thought, okay, then you obviously look at everything. What are we going to need to do in that final? And it was in the end, what do they also want to do? They want to play high speed. They want to move the ball. They're playing 3 o'clock at altitude. So how can we frustrate them? How can we frustrate them? How can we keep the ball away from them? How can we create opportunities for us to put them under pressure, because
Mm,
we needed to put them under pressure and see how they respond. And then obviously they've got a we looked at their defense and I thought they've got a I won't say an old school defense, but they've almost got a defense. Jacques Fourie runs that was the same that when he played for the Stormers under Jacques Nienaber. It's a very passive defense. There's not a lot of line speed. But they do cover the whole field and they make a lot of double hits. It's all about line integrity and connections for them. They don't put a lot of pressure on trying to make reads and stuff, but they do make their tackles and they do fight hard in the contact, but it's difficult to play around us. And we struggled to get around them 2 weeks ago, and then Boland struggled to get around him. And then after 7, 8 phases, you make a mistake and then they punish you. And then just thought, listen, they don't compete at the breakdown as well. So they've got two guys max in, 13 players on their feet the whole time. And where we're a team where we're not scared to put a third or fourth guy into a breakdown to win a turnover, look for a counter ruck, try and make good reads on the outside channels. Bit more risky. Where we thought the Lions were happy to defend 15, 16 phases, wait for you to make a mistake. Um, and Yeah, so then we discussed it and we said, listen, why don't we try and go through the middle? You know, why don't we try and pull them in? We might get a penalty here or there for them being offside. Let's try and create one-on-ones and not give them so many opportunities to double it. You know, Nico Steyn defends a lot at pillar one he finds himself at pillar one, a lot of rucks where instead of, he fills that role instead of a prop or hooker, it gives them more width. So we just said, let's go through the middle. Let's try and pull them in through the middle. And when they get a little bit closer, then we try and go wide.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I think one of the first opportunities we had was we had a scrum 20 meters out early on in the game. And I picked up and gone just picked and drive, and then our forwards went from there, and we went like within 7 phases, went to half a meter from the try line, and then George White had swung it wide, and Gershwin Weir got tackled out in the corner. And even though we didn't score there, I think that just showed the guys, listen, this plan is working. You know, we pulled them in, we got meters, we pulled them in, and we created a space on the outside. And late in the second half, we got a few penalties with the pick and goes. We caught them offside, which was part of the plan, and then Zane Bester made a line break after a few pick and goes. We could clearly see how we got them tighter and narrower, and then Dylan Mart was tackled out in the corner. So I think we got the reward that we wanted. You know, we had an overthrow there from a line out where Asanati smashed him and someone else smashed our 12 center, but the plan was there, just create the one-on-one there with the inside pass, and if he got the inside pass away, we probably would have scored there. So we had a few plans, and one of the other plans was I actually looked at I think it was a 2013 Currie Cup final, Province against the Sharks, Sharks one in Cape Town. I went to look, I downloaded that game from YouTube. I watched that game. What the Sharks did in that game was short kicks over the top against a similar Western Province defense. I can't remember if you don't even remember that game. Shaw McLeod just put it short chip kicks behind the ruck, over the ruck. Pat Lambie kicked a few drop goals. And we said, listen, we've got to look for maybe to pull them a bit closer, get Nico Steyn out of the line, maybe look for a chip kick over the ruck, and then we did it in the final, and the Lions scored from that. So all plans doesn't always work. And then I sent a message on. I said, let's bin that tactic. Let's rather keep the ball close. But if you look back at it, even just that kick put a bit of doubt in when Nico Steyn must defend, or must he be in the line, must he be behind the line?
Mm.
So it eventually all plays a part. And then George had a few drop goals. Even though he didn't slot it, he missed that drop goal. You're still in there off. You still get the ball back. People were saying, why do you kick to touch to go for a try? And then when you receive the 22-meter drop, and then you decide to go for a drop, you might as well just take the penalty. But it is different. The penalty, we got 5 meters out, put pressure on them. Now I receive a 22. Now I can say, okay, listen, that didn't work. Let's go for 3 points. If we miss, we're still in their half. We can still keep the ball.
Mm.
And yeah, we frustrate them. I think the biggest thing was them frustrating them. We kept the ball away from them. I think in the end, they made 40 tackles more than us. If you look at the stats during the season, Lions seldom make less tackles, seldom make more tackles than opposition because they want to play with ball in hand. So, well, yeah, this is happy. It doesn't always work, but yeah, I was lucky that the plan worked this week.
Out of my ignorance, but I'm interested to know what exactly is a negative impact. What does that mean? What does it refer to?
Yeah, so when we look at positive impacts, is anything you do well, at like a pass, a clean, a carry, a defender beat, and a line break assist, all those sort of stuff. A negative impact is a missed tackle, a handling error, a penalty conceded. I think that's more or less the most line out. Any mistake, like anything
Mm.
that's not good,
Okay.
really, is a negative. So in
All
the
right.
end, we looked at it yesterday morning. I think we were more almost on par with that, which we made a big step up with.
Did you have few or did they have more?
I can't remember. It was very close. I still think we had a bit more than them.
But I mean, did you
but it
have
wasn't
fewer
like,
than you had before? Did you reduce your
wasn't like
negative? Mm.
more than double than like the previous two
Mm.
matches.
Oh, awesome, man. That's a lot of work on, to get that done, I'm sure. Yes. And especially if you take into consideration the pressure that they're playing under. It's a final, it's at Ellis Park, and the change rooms, like you said, and then to actually reduce your negative stuff, that says a lot about the spirit of this team, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's I mean, these guys are incredible. I actually just on that, I presented the plan to the players on the Monday, and then we obviously worked on it on Monday, and we worked on it on Tuesday. We were in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then even on Wednesday, after our last session, Wednesday morning, we still had the forwards there in for an extra 3 minutes walkthrough just on the pick and goes and what's important and the role of the first and the second guy. And it's not something you do every week. You
Mm.
do a lot of pick and goes and stuff on the try line 5 meters out. You practice that, but that's more of slow ball, and we want to do it of quick ball and want to get momentum there. Don't want to really slow it down. So there was a lot of detail I need to get in there because obviously the guy goes and pick and goes on his own, and ends up, and there's no one with him because he wants to do it quick. Then there's a big risk for turnovers and stuff. And we lost one or two, which was obviously understandable because it was a new thing for all of us. But then on Wednesday, I had my last drivers meeting. Also, we call it a drivers meeting. It's just with the game drivers, the hookers, the locks, the 910s, and everyone. And I asked them, "What do you guys think about the plan?" And George Whitehead said, he said, "Coach, great. We back it. I believe it's going to work, and let's go for it." And so even on Wednesday, we're like, "Okay, now," and the players bought in. Yeah, and I think yeah, it was just to be honest, they work so incredibly hard. All that game was gone, and when Lubela kicked that last penalty, that and you thought, okay, the game's done. I just thought they said that these players don't deserve it. The way they worked, the way they pitched up for this game away from home, no one gave them a chance. I'd rather lose this game by 25 points. No one gave you a chance, than losing it by 1 point in that manner. That would have been really, really cruel. But yeah, it's been a group. We had a good leadership group the whole year. The players have built. Players have a great team culture. They're very, very close. We yeah, all I can say, the way they've conducted themselves this year on and off the field, and the way they've worked and prepared for matches, they deserve this.
Now, you mentioned George Whitehead. Now, you just mentioned now you were 1 point behind, Booter is gone, and then you get the penalty. Talk to me about that feeling. I mean, the poor Lions, second year in a row, they lose the game after the Hooter, but we don't care about them. How did you feel? What did you feel? Were you jumping up and down? Were you just sort of, what was emotions going through your head at that moment?
Yeah, firstly was I think it was 50 seconds left. Firstly was I think George when he kicked off, I think he kicked his worst kickoff of his life. He wanted to kick it short, contestable that we want to win it back, but he hooked it like a golfer, and he kicked it straight into Nico Stein's hands. And I think lots been said about Nico Stein kicking that ball out. I think Nico Stein was so surprised that the ball came to him because he also thought probably this is going to be a short kickoff, contestable, and he was probably so surprised that the ball came to him, and he just kicked it out. And then I thought, oh, we've got a chance here. And yeah, when that slap down happened, I immediately saw that. I was on the radio to my coaches on next to the field, and I said, "Get into the ears, get into the ears. I've got to watch this. I've got to watch this." And then luckily, my analyst said he's got the TMO in his earphones with the TMO, and he said, "No, Egan's looking at it. He's looking at it." Okay, then I felt a bit more calm, but yeah, George is, he's when he practices kicks, he only practices one kick, and that is 10 meters in front from his own 10 meter, no, from the 10-meter line in front of the poles. And he's obviously so experienced and knows his own goal kicking technique and everything inside out. You'll never see him practice a kick from the touch line or from the 15-meter
Hmm.
line or even from the halfway line or back. He knows his angles if he needs to go 10 meters right, 10 meters left, and he when we got that penalty, and I thought, well, this is almost exact same position that George only practices his kicking from. I was calm. I thought the only way he can miss this is if he slips or something that if something terribly goes wrong. Because he's won a lot of games since I've been assistant coach here. He's won our semi-finals. I can remember a Vodacom Cup semi-final in, I think it was in Nelspruit. There was a Currie Cup game 2022 at Western Province. In Stellenbosch, we played. We made a comeback. He kicked a conversion after the hooter. I've got it like 6 or 7 times that George kicked a winning penalty after the hooter, but I can't remember one he's missed ever after one important one. So yeah, I was really calm in that scenario because I thought, listen, if you kick off George's capability, this is probably where you want to kick now.
Mm. Okay, but then you were calm while he was lining it up, but when it went over and you realized you've actually won the Currie Cup for the first
Mm,
time in 55 years, how did
yeah.
that feel?
Yeah, that was emotional. I was sitting in the coach's box and Franco van der Merwe down on the field. He was shouting on the radio, come down, come celebrate with us." And I just sat there in the coach's box and I just wanted to take it all in and just take a minute for myself. And I video called my wife and my child and wanted to spend a moment with them because they didn't go up for the final. Yeah, and then eventually went down and celebrated with the guys. But yeah, it's incredible. As I said, I didn't think we'd get another chance. You never know, will you get another chance after 2022? Um, yeah, obviously grew up with this competition. With
Yeah.
my dad being Roland, and you you never thought, listen, you always thought, okay, you wanted to hold that trophy and be part of history, but then to eventually uh, hold that and you almost feel the history, you almost feel who drank out of that cup,
Yeah.
it was just incredible.
All right. Let's talk about the Currie Cup as a competition then. Do you think it's fair that you had to end up playing against basically a URC team? And is that the way forward for the Currie Cup? What do you see the future of the Currie Cup as?
Yeah, it's difficult because we we do talk from our viewpoint from Griquas, but we also do understand the viewpoint from the other unions. But when this Currie Cup started, we played a friendly against Western Province in Cape Town 2 weeks before the Currie Cup started, and their coaching staff said to us straight, listen, we're going. Our last game versus Boland, we are going to go full strength URC just like they did a year ago against us. So some of the Lions coaches said to us early in the competition, listen, they're gonna go 3, 4 games. They're gonna go URC. The Sharks said they're gonna go URC last 2 rounds. They said probably Pumas and I think it was Boland that they will go URC. So we knew that from the beginning that the teams will go much stronger. So it was always I mean, it was almost part of our planning.
Mm.
We need to get our points as soon as we can because it is a single round. And so when the other teams do get stronger, that we put ourselves in a good position. I think we were a bit, I wouldn't say lucky, but fortunate is probably the word that the Bulls and the Sharks were out of the competition when the semi-finals came. So last year the Sharks did exactly the same, but they won a few more games and then they could go full strength in the semi-final and the final and win it. And they probably would have done the same this year if they were in the semis. So um, but looking forward, I know it's for us. It's still, I mean, it's our main competition. It's our main source of income. You see what it meant for the town. This trophy. We've got to savor it. We've got to, from our viewpoint of view. I know there's no. We've got to be honest about it. There is no space in the calendar for a strength versus strength Currie Cup. But even previous years, even early years, 10, 12 years ago, the Currie Cup was played while the rugby championship was on, and a lot of players were out of it. A lot of a lot of Springboks, the Springboks never played
Mm.
in the Currie Cup since rugby's become professional, uh, yes, they were probably there were stronger teams, the teams like the Cheetahs, for instance, they World Cup year when there's a lot of Springboks out. The Cheetahs were the favorites for the Currie Cup because they had the least amount of box and they won the Currie Cup. I think it was in 2007. Won it, I think 2019 wasn't it? I might get my
Mm.
dates wrong. But 2023, another World Cup year, I think um, they won it. Because they won it because the other teams had more Springboks out. And now teams Springboks not available. But then as soon as the playoffs came, most of the time the Springboks came back for the semi-final and the final. A
Yeah.
lot of times were in the old days. So it's since rugby's been official, it's never been strength versus strength. um, Maybe there's a bit more players out now than previously, but yeah, we hopefully we can find a way um, to. I don't think it will ever be like it was in the 80s or the 70s.
Yeah, can't
It
be.
will never be like that. Because the landscape has changed. Everything changes in life, and you've got to move on with the times. Uh, but yeah, but for the smaller units now, you saw the crowds at Boland. Yeah, Boland Cheetahs Currie Cup. They played it as in the SA Cup in Wellington. There wasn't 1,000 people. Boland versus Cheetahs Currie Cup, the stadium is sold out.
Mm.
It's there's just a different story around the Currie Cup,
It does
and
mean
and
something
and
still. Yeah.
exactly, and we just the scenes in Kimberley on Sunday was the Currie Cup. We had a sold out stadium for a home semi final against the Cheetahs. We had a home semi final against the Cheetahs in the SA Cup. It wasn't half the people there, so it is just different. And yeah, from our side, I mean, long may it continue.
One last question. I'm keeping you a long time here. I just wanted to ask about those players being loaned to the Stormers. You're not afraid of losing them? Gershon Weir, I mean, that name has been on everybody's lips for a couple of seasons now. What are the future like for those kind of players? Do you think they learn a lot? Are they coming back? What's the thinking?
Yeah, so currently they're only training with the Stormers. They haven't done like on loan until for the full URC. They're
Okay.
gonna look at them and just get them used to their structures. And I think they're gonna spend out the 2 weeks there. Then the Stormers go for a 3 week overseas tour. I think then they'll go a bit on a break, and then we'll see where they are at December. Do they want to use them maybe for some of the Challenge Champions Cup games or where they're at? There's been inquiries for George Whitehead from the Bulls and the Sharks on a short-term loan. There's been inquiries for some of our players to go. Cheetahs want to loan some of our players to strengthen them for the Challenge Cup. Look, we don't play rugby for 6 months. If we can send players to go get valuable experience, and we maybe get some money back to try and keep them, or get to look at our budget, because sometimes I think Franco Smith said the same thing when he won the URC. You almost become a victim of your own success, where you do well, you build a team, and then people want your players, but then I mean, and their market value goes up because they rightfully say, listen, I need to earn more money, but your budget, doesn't grow
Hmm.
grow like that. So Franco, for instance, said he had to let players go. He's got a smaller squad now than he originally wanted because his players' market value went up, and I think that's the biggest challenge for us. And that's why it's so important that if we can get another competition which can bring in broadcast money or more sponsors, then it will help us to look after our players better. We cannot really afford to spend more on our players. We're not allowed to spend more than the total annual spend that my players and Saru put together that we can spend. So if we can send players 3 months to the Sharks or 3 months to the Bulls, and we save a bit of money, like our captain Lamini is now at the Sharks, we save his salary, 4 months salary now whiles
Hmm.
away. So if we can put that back into our budget and can help keep some other players for longer, then that obviously helps. The challenge is always there. In the past, we sent Mulder to the Lions, he didn't come back. Sergio gone to the Lions, he didn't come back. Reinhard Jonker, not Reinhard Jonker, Zander du Plessis was on loan. then they sign him. So that's obviously the challenge. Then when you don't have the players with you and they've got the players on under their eyes the whole time and they can make them offers and stuff, then and they see the quality the guys have, then it does make it difficult. But we've got a thing we're gonna run now where we're gonna treat every player on merit and when does his contract end? Okay, where's the opportunity? So in the end, it must make sense for the player and for us, and financially for us. Hopefully, we can send the player on loan, but first he must first re-sign his contract, then he can go on loan. Stuff like
Ah,
that.
clever.
That we look at. Listen, you can go, but first sign a longer term. First extend your
Mm.
contract, and then you can look at a loan. So that's some of the stuff we're looking at to try and keep this group together. But as things stand, Leon Lyons and Thomas Percy are the only guys leaving us from the 23 that played in the final who will not, as things stand, not be available for next year's Currie Cup for us.
Where they're leaving to the Stormers.
So Leon's gone to the Stormers, and Percy's gone to the Pumas. Yeah, he signed for the
Okay.
Pumas.
All right.
Yeah.
I was interested to hear that you said the Bulls were interested in George Whitehead. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, yeah. I just think it's all short term. It's
Mm.
until the Springboks come back. I think Goosen's still injured. Pollard is not there. I think they've only got Keegan Johannes and a
Mm.
few youngsters there. So yeah, but I think it's yeah interest, and then the thing actually happens is sometimes there's a big gap between interest and anything really happening. Some of our players like just be on standby. We'll do your visa for you just for in case we need you. It's
Oh,
not.
yeah.
It might be we're happy now, but if we get one injury, then we look at that, look at you. So yeah, there's been interest, but yeah, nothing concrete now. Mm.
That's interesting. Sorry, I'm hopping on a bit now, but people don't realize these guys only play 6 months of the year, but you have to pay them for 12. They're
Yeah.
full-time employees. So it does make a lot of sense. I remember once when Henry Immelman suddenly played for the Sharks, and I asked Jake, why is Henry Immelman suddenly playing for the Sharks? And he said, no, they offered, they're taking over his salary, save some money. Makes such a lot of sense that you're talking to me about that. But I like the idea of, getting them to sign, commit to the union, and then they can go. Because I know Jimmy Stannard said exactly the same thing, with Sebastian de Klerk, David Williams, all those guys on loan never came back. It's a problem. That's a clever way of going about it. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. We cannot do full ERC loans. There has been inquiries. So the problem is we have to qualify in the SA Cup to play in the Currie Cup next year again. So that's a story for another day. You win the Currie Cup, but you must qualify to play in it again next year. Yeah, yeah. That's, as I say, that's a story for another day. But we obviously need our players to play in the SA Cup. We need our best players to play in the SA Cup because we must qualify. If you don't need to qualify in the SA Cup, then we can look at more at longer agreements. We can look at the whole landscape changes with our own squad. We can develop our squad. We can maybe look at the guys from our varsity, give them opportunities. But I mean, the pressure in the SA Cup is so big that you need to play in the Currie Cup. So it's important that we have our best players back for the Currie Cup. So any loan agreements we do now is just until the end of the year for now. Yeah.
All right, Peter, thanks so much for making time for me early on a Thursday morning. And well done again. I
No,
mean,
no.
we like underdogs winning. We love it. So well done. We're proud of you, man.
Yeah. Thanks, MVA. It's always nice to speak to you. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, man.